The battle for worst reviewed Marvel movie in history rages on, and we have now reached the stage of the game where the press is whining about review brigading. Look, every movie that comes out gets some amount of people leaving reviews before they've seen it. In fact, really, Rotten Tomatoes itself changed their entire consumer review system after both The Last Jedi and Captain Marvel sparked outrage from Hollywood that people would dare have an opinion about a movie without seeing it. Now, I do understand, for accuracy's sake, you want to have some level of, you've actually seen some of it. However, there are extenuating circumstances, for example, in terms of, let's say, Captain Marvel. You didn't enjoy Brie Larson's comments about some 40-year-old white guy not caring about what some 40-year-old white guy had to say. If you had that problem, if you had a problem with that, and you wanted to leave a review on the movie and say, "Hey, I dislike Brie Larson, so I'm not interested in seeing this movie," is it an authentic review? No, but it's also a review, in my opinion, because if I, for example, was on the fence about seeing a movie and then I knew my money was going to support somebody who is just garbage, I'm not saying Brie is. I love Brie. This is the unofficial Brie fan club. Let's say it was AB, or like just some really annoying person in Hollywood or whatever. And then they had said some like disparaging things about something you enjoyed or something like that. And that was a part of a review. I believe that that's still part of, the experience. If I'm going to give somebody who's already a multimillionaire more of my money, and I find out later that they're a piece of garbage, I'd probably rather not give them my money. And as more reviews continue to pile in, the tomato meter, I believe, was it at 61 yesterday? I forget. But really, nothing but negative reviews are rolling in at this point. It's, quite frankly, here's some of the most recent ones. October 28th. Michael LaSalle. 1 out of 4. It takes a special kind of movie, anti-magic, to make an entire audience indifferent to the potential destruction of the planet and elimination of all life on Earth. Eternals manages it. Dana Stevens. Zhao, a director whose previous 3 films have all centered on everyday lives of working-class rural outsiders, seems ill-suited to a movie of this scale and frankly uninterested in the fight scenes. I mean, I figured that was the case, but here's the thing about how Marvel picks directors. They pick directors that check boxes. This is I guess I can't say that as a fact, but I do feel, based on with things that insiders have told me, and after covering this for a very long time, it's like, on what planet would Nia DaCosta get to be directing Captain Marvel 2 or Miss Marvel or The Marvels, when she's got really a tiny resume? She was tapped to direct Captain Marvel 2 with, I believe at the time, only one like irrelevant indie movie under her belt. Now she recently did the reboot of Candyman, which was a meh out of 10, but to be handed the reins on a $1 billion franchise, and yes, Captain Marvel is a $1 billion franchise, is idiotic. There's literally no way that Marvel says, "Hey, cool, do what you want, we'll see you at the end." Of course there are checks and balances in place, and I highly doubt that the directors of Marvel movies have an enormous amount of freedom to do as they wish. However, that's what I used to think. Now with Eternals, one of the common kind of themes in a lot of these negative reviews are that it's not a Marvel movie. Watching Chloe Zhao's The Rider made me want to learn horseback riding. Nomadland illustrated the reality of houseless Americans face and offered a window into the American West. Both intertwined fiction and reality. I knew Eternals was going to be different. 5 out of 10. Involves a lot of windy locations, sparse imagination for action, and a cast of characters who are seldom interesting. While I can respect the MCU took a risk by telling an ambitious and indifferent story, the story and storytelling simply don't match the film's ambition. People will decide for themselves whether the innovations are enough or not, but for me, it was somewhat disappointing. Vanity Fair. From visuals to music, there's a lack of style here, and only further emphasizes the film's refusal to focus. Chloe just didn't know what she was doing, but it does kind of fly in the face of my theory that, essentially Hollywood, these Marvel movies are formulaic, which I think is inarguable, but it does fly in the face of my idea that Disney doesn't go hands off on these type of things. Now maybe given her awards, maybe they gave her more reins, but they had to know this movie would suck. I mean, and by the way, I want to be clear too. These are just reviewers. Maybe the fans will love it. I don't know many people who've actually seen this film, and admittedly, the people that I know that have seen it kind of have an anti-Marvel bias. So I'm not putting a ton of weight on their review of it. I've never had any interest in seeing this. I don't care for any of the actors or actresses. I don't care for the concept. I don't care how I don't care for. I'm supposed to care about these 10 people who didn't care, who weren't involved at all in Endgame or Infinity War, or any of this kind of stuff. Eternals is a disaster of intergalactic proportions. The reason that I think that it's relevant, by the way, this is via Slate. The reason I think that it's relevant that the critics are slamming this movie, it's got everything the critics would want. Uber diverse cast, award-winning, strong, independent woman who don't need no man, who's also a woman of color as a director. Should be one of those movies that critics just give a 10 out of 10, would watch again, because it has all of the individual little things that critics care about nowadays more than making a good movie. The fact that critics give it a 63%, hey, I could be wrong. Look at Venom. Venom, critics hate it, but fans love Venom so much that is, the critics could give that thing a 30%, and people still, I think the first one made 800 million or something like that. So the two aren't always the same, and we'll have to wait to see what the fans say. I'm going to make a prediction. You make your prediction down in the comments down below. I'm going to say the fans give this movie, and give yourself a range. I'm going to say between 70 and 73. Give yourself 3 points. There's no way that fans are going to give this thing 100 or a 90. Would I be shocked if it was an 80? No. Maybe the Eternals fan base is just bigger than I suspect, or bigger than I know. A lot of times fandoms can be regional too. When I grew up, or where I grew up, I've never even heard of the Eternals until recently. That doesn't mean that other areas of the country, they might have been wildly popular. I'm not stupid enough to think just because I haven't heard of something, or that I didn't think it was a big deal, that it is in fact a big deal. Look at ASMR, for crying out loud. Most people are like, what's that? And that's a space on YouTube far bigger than the one I populate in. But now we've got Major Damage Control already running. Eternals Review Brigade on IMDb before film's release. Despite the fact that the Eternals have not been released, several have taken to review brigading the movie on IMDb for its LGBTQIA representation. Let's see. I haven't read this article, I'm being honest. I always like to read them, first and foremost. So what this article is already doing is painting the fandom as phobic, right? They're going after the fans, Marvel fans. And I'm going to predict that if we see any examples of it, it will be like 1 to 2 examples of it. At the height, before IMDb scrubbed it, there was like 1,000 reviews. So if all these reviews are on there, about, phobic stuff and this and that, there should be hundreds of examples. Let's see. Eternals is set to feature a lot of firsts for the MCU. Yeah, apparently there's a hookup scene. I know if there's one thing I felt like MCU movies were missing, were hardcore hookup scenes. Director Chloe Zhao and the studio have talked much about the film's diverse cast. course, that's all they talk about, and strives for inclusion. It will include a gay superhero in the MCU. Nobody cares. And the first deaf superhero. Nobody cares. Zhao also has even said she hopes that Marvel Studios does not censor the movie for overseas audiences. Respect, Chloe. Respect. Just because you have one stinker doesn't mean you're a bad director. Clearly, I don't think Chloe Zhao is a bad director. Just probably a bad project for her. Marvel Studios is making an active effort to make their superhero films more accessible and diverse. What are they in it? What about them is less accessible or more accessible because there's a deaf character in it? It appears a subset of people have taken the issue with it and brought themselves to Review Brigade. The Direct reports that IMDb's rating for The Eternals was flooded with negative reviews a week before the film's theatrical release. By the way, this happens to every movie. With over 400 one-star reviews, a common point of criticism among them leaving negative reviews of the inclusion of a man-on-man kiss and the film's representation. IMDb has since removed the audience rating section of Eternals until after the film's theatrical release. So you provided zero evidence. That's less than I expected. I expected you to have like one random, I suspect, and I know this is easy to say, but I suspect that, these reporters will just create a couple of dummy accounts and write some like anti-LGBTQ stuff to like just then write an article about it. In the case of the Eternals, one user, you provided one example. One. Saki, totally unrecognizable from the comics. All it does is tick all the Hollywood woke boxes, which seems to be the goal, not storytelling, but that's hardly surprising these days. Don't waste your money, not worth it. Seems fine to me. If woke and mediocre would be given a medal, this would win. Come on, Marvel, this was cheap even for you. Such a crappy movie like this could only be done with Angelina Jolie and her style of making amendments to movies. Not watchable at all. That's it? That's your evidence? These aren't even bad. Are you joking? Oh, I guess I shouldn't be surprised that reporters lied. I hope you enjoyed this video. We'll talk to you again real soon.